Hi guys, welcome back again to Dinner Guide. I'm your host and chef, Sheena Amario. Today we're going to be making tilapia in tomato, herb and butter sauce, as well as some coconut rice. And the coconut rice, I'm going to put some cardamom, this little cardamom, so that's what we're going to put in our rice. So to start off with the ingredients for the rice, we're going to have some cardamom in there, and then we're going to have some coconuts, some salt of course, and the rice itself. Those are the main ingredients I'm putting. And then we're going to add some coconut milk just to bring a nice coconutty flavor, and that's why I'm using the coconut oil. And then for the fish that I mentioned is going to be in the tomato herb sauce. It's actually going to have some garlic, some onions, some peppers, and the pepper I'm using here is chili cayenne, and then I'm using some paprika as well, and then some black pepper, some lemon, the juice and the zest, both of them, and then the sugar is just to balance out the acidity, as well as some tomato paste, some butter, some tomatoes, and of course my capsicums. So those are the main ingredients. And then for the sauces, I'm going to be using some chicken stock. Now this is just regular stock, which basically is you can make your own chicken stock, or you can just get the cube, you know, the one you buy from the supermarket or wherever you'll buy from, like the closest store to you. Then just get it and then dissolve it in some hot water, and then what you get is a nice liquidy, which is what I have here. And then of course the coconut milk that I've mentioned we're going to use in the rice dish, and my fish, of course. And for the herbs, we're going to be using some basil leaves as well as some parsley. So that's it for today. Those are the main ingredients we're using. So to start off with, I want to start by sauteing my rice. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. And the rice I'm using a very good quality rice. So if perhaps you're using the rice that you buy, the one that's measured out for you, when you go out and then they measure it out for you with like a cup or something like that, then you want to make sure that it's been thoroughly washed. But with what I'm using, I'm going to skip that step and go right ahead to my frying of the rice. So let me just put on my stove here, and then I'm going to direct you as to what it is that I want us to do next. So I'm just going to reduce the heat, and then I'm going to start off by melting my coconut oil. Now I love using coconut oil. Like I've mentioned, I'm making some coconut cardamom rice, and what that does, it brings a nice nutty flavor to your rice. So I'm going to go ahead and be a bit generous with it. So I'm using 2 teaspoons. So the coconut oil has this nice, you can actually smell it. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so nice and nutty. The nuttiness is what you're looking for. What it does to the rice is it gives it this nice nutty flavor from far, and gives it the coconut taste as well. And usually with it, actually a little goes a long way. And the nice thing with the coconut oil I'm using, it doesn't have anything else added to it, so it's purely coconut oil. So you can easily use it for your hair as well, for moisturizing your skin, because it's nice and soft. If you look at it, it's so nice and soft, so you can use it for your skin. All that, it's very nice and soft because it doesn't have anything else added to it, so it can be multitasking with it. So I'm going to add my rice here now. Remember I mentioned if you're not using a very high quality sort of rice, then you make sure you wash your rice and soak it out. But I am, so I'm skipping that process because I want to make sure that I toss my rice. And the reason I'm not washing my rice is when you toss the rice, it's nice when the grains are dry so they can absorb the flavor of the oils, which is what I'm looking to do. So I'm just going to get my wooden spoon here and then stir this by giving this a nice stir. Oh, yes. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. The rice is actually going to be coated well in the oil. It starts to coat it really nice, and it toasts it as well a bit. That's what happens when you fry your rice, like in the beginning. It gets well and toasted from the oil in the pan that I've mentioned. I'm using coconut oil. And then to that, we're going to be adding some cardamom. Now my cardamom, I'm using fresh cardamom, as you can see. So what I like to do is just bash this. And what this does is just releases the seeds so that they're nice and pungent when they hit the pan. So we're just going to toss this gently. And 4 actually are enough, because again, a little goes a long way. And you see when you break this like I've done, the seeds, you can actually see the seeds. Oh, there's just something about using fresh spices. They're just so aromatic. So like I've mentioned, this is cardamom. This is what I'm using. So I'm just going to add this in here, and you can see this is already toasting. So you want to stir it. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about. You start to see the rice start to toast and turn a little bit brown. So don't let it brown too much because you don't want it to burn. Be careful of that. So I'm just going to take this out of the heat. And then just combine this again. And then now add my stock. So for my stock here, I'm going to reduce the heat there and put this just off the heat. So I'm going to be using the same cup I use. Try and use that as your rule of measuring when you're cooking. So if you're using rice 1 cup, use 2 liquids. So whatever your liquid is in this case. In my case, I've mentioned I'm using my coconut milk as well as some stock. So I'm going to go ahead and open my coconut milk and then just add this. And I'm measuring this out. So you see that it's pretty much a cup. So I'll just top off a little bit. So I'm going to be using 2 parts of my liquids, which in this case, coconut milk, and of course my chicken stock. And that's the easiest way to make your rice nice and fluffy and perfect. Then I'm just going to stir that in. So put it back in the heat and then stir it. Now remember that I'm using coconut milk here, and it is from the tin, so it will most likely have its own seasoning, meaning it's going to have a bit of salt. So you want to be very careful at this stage if you decide to add any salt. So I'm going to let this come to a boiling point, and I'm going to taste this so I can see whether I need to add any more salt at this stage. Oh yum. The nuttiness that I was talking about when you toast your rice, you can actually taste it right away in the liquid. And this to me tastes like it has a bit of salt from farm. So I'm just going to go ahead and add very little. Just because I've mentioned I'm using coconut milk, and coconut milk has its own salt in it. So you want to be very careful with the amount of seasoning you're putting. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover this now that it's come to a boiling point. And then you're going to let your rice cook gently on low heat. So just go ahead. Once it comes to a boiling point, make sure you cover your rice. And then we're going to go on a short break. And when you guys come back, we're going to go ahead and get started on our fish dish. And by then the rice will be going on. So see you after the break. Hi guys, welcome back again to Dinner Guide. I'm your host and chef, Sheena Amario. Now if you just tuned in, we're making tilapia, which is here. I'm just going to dab it. We're making tilapia in a tomato herb and butter sauce with some coconut cardamom rice. Now the coconut cardamom rice is actually ongoing. If you just tuned in, I sauteed my rice in some coconut oil and then added my cardamoms and then added now my coconut milk and my other liquid, which was actually chicken stock, but you could use water at home. And a good rule of thumb when making rice is to use the 1:2 ratio, meaning if you use 1 part rice, use 2 parts liquid. Whatever your liquid is, you could use a coconut milk or use some water or use some chicken stock, some veggie stock, whatever you like. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and start seasoning my fish, and I'm just seasoning it with some salt and pepper. And then also actually to mention to you guys, if you have a pot at home that actually has like the lid that opens, that isn't secure like that, you want to make sure you cover it because this removes steam, and you want to make sure you are saving all the steam to cook the rice all the way through. So you want to make sure that whatever vessel you're using to cook your rice, it's actually well covered so that your rice can steam nicely inside. And then make sure it's on the lowest heat as possible. So we're just going to come back here and continue seasoning our fish. Then I'm going to add a bit of olive oil to my pan. So my pan has been preheating. So I'm just going to add a bit of olive oil just so that I can get the sizzle when I add my fish. Then season this again with some salt and black pepper. Now I love black pepper. If you don't like black pepper, you don't have to use it. but be generous with it if you're a huge fan of black pepper like I am. Then I'm also going to use a bit of cayenne and a bit of paprika. So I'm using a bit of cayenne. Now the cayenne will bring in a kick here, so you want to make sure you're not going too much or too heavy with it, especially if you're not a huge fan of cayenne pepper. And then my oil is getting hot, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish the other side on the pan. So I'm finishing season the one side. Remember, I've seasoned both sides with my salt and pepper, but for the cayenne and paprika I've just done the one side. So that's the side that's going to go and heat my pan. Always swirl your pan around to make sure that the oil spreads evenly. And there's the sizzle. Just make sure anytime you're frying anything you have the sizzle, because without it you end up not frying whatever it is you're making, but more of steaming it. And at this stage we're not after steaming anything. So I'm going to add a bit more of my paprika. Now paprika just gives your food a nice red color. It's like a hint of red. So just adding a bit of paprika and then a bit of the cayenne pepper. Like I mentioned, cayenne does have some heat to it. It's a bit milder than fresh chili or chili powder, but it still has a kick to it. So if you're not a huge fan of chili, just make sure you're using it on the lower side. So I'm just going to wash my hands. And then always make sure whenever you're washing your hands in the kitchen, so always make sure to wash your hands as you continue whatever cooking process it is that you're doing at that particular time. So next we're going to go and start ahead with our vegetables now, since our fish is now cooking slowly and our rice is still cooking. So just clear your board here since I haven't used it for anything yet. And then we're going to go ahead and start with our vegetables. So what I'm going to start with here is my onions. And I mentioned for this I'm using, it's a tomato herb butter sauce. So I'm going to be using some onions as well because I have them. But you don't really have to use the onions, but I don't mind the onions in my food, so I'm going to be using some. So just place your waste aside. Then we're just going to go ahead and slice this. Nothing too fancy here, just a rough chop will be fine. And that's how I like to chop my vegetables. And then go through if I'm looking for a chop. This just makes it easy for you to chop whatever it is in one go without having to repeat yourself. And it makes your work very easy, because in no time I'm done with my chopping. It didn't even take me much time. Okay, so place this aside. So we're going to be using some onions here, some capsicum. So I'm just trying to make sure that those are chopped before my fish cooks. Then we're going to be using some garlic because I love my garlic. Now if you don't like garlic, you don't have to use it. And of course I'm going to be using some capsicums or some peppers or hoho. If you're from Kenya, that's just our Kiswahili name for capsicums and peppers. Bell peppers, that is. So I've just bashed this with the knife just so the skin can be easy to peel off, as you can see. When you bash when you bash your garlic with the knife, it makes it really easy to peel. It doesn't take you much time. So I'm going to check on my fish because I don't want it to burn. And I can tell, again, when you know your fish is ready to turn, you can tell the sides start to lift up from the pan and they start to turn a bit golden brown and white on the sides. So I'm just going to flip this gently. Oh, look at the color. Just lovely. Again, you can see the white sides and you can see the browning, and this is exactly what you're looking for. So you know it's time to flip your fish. There we are. So let that cook gently. Then I want to have a look at my rice, just so to make sure that nothing is burning while I'm going on with everything else. Always try and keep an eye to everything you're cooking, because sometimes if your heat is too high, then your liquid can evaporate before your rice is fully cooked, and we don't want that. So that is still not yet. Oh, the coconut in that is amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, and then for my rice I'm going to add very little stock just because I noticed a little bit had evaporated earlier. When I mentioned that whatever lid you have, try to make sure it has, it doesn't have an evaporating lid, because your moisture is going to get lost and you need that moisture to steam all your rice. So I'm just going to add very little liquid, not too much, just so my rice doesn't burn from the bottom. And then cover that. And then check on your fish. It's looking good, so I'm going to go ahead and chop my garlic. Now the dish we're making, again, it's something very simple you could do at home. I always like to make sure I'm using ingredients that you guys can find easily. Now I mentioned I'm using tilapia, but if you're not a fan of tilapia, you could definitely do this with whatever fish you like. For example, kingfish. If you're looking to be a little bit more extravagant, you could use kingfish. You could use red snapper as well. So try and make it work with whatever fish you like. That way you'll be willing to actually try out the recipe and actually cook it at home and eat it. Because if you don't like tilapia and I'm using tilapia, then you're going to use that as an excuse not to cook, and I want you to really cook. So use whatever fish you like. So place your garlic on the side. So I'm going to take out my fish here. I don't want my fish to cook all the way. Though to me this, I would say, is pretty much done. It's 3/4 way done. So I'm just going to place it in a plate, just so that I can now start sauteing my vegetables, because I want the fish to go into the sauce. Because remember, like I mentioned, I'm making tilapia in a tomato, herb and butter sauce. So start with your onions, and you want to make sure you use the same pan, because that pan is going to have all these nice juices, so you don't want to waste that. That is like liquid gold, that's what I'll call it. That's like the fat in there, and it has all these nice flavors from the fish, so you definitely do not want to lose that at all. Okay, so just saute this. Now at this stage you'll want to add a bit more oil. Don't worry about whatever gets away from you, you can always just add it. Add a bit more of olive oil. And I'm also going to be adding my butter, but not now, because I don't want my butter to burn. And I also want to taste my butter at the end. Okay, then we're going to add our garlic, but we're going to let this saute briefly. In the meantime, I'm going to chop my capsicums. Now my capsicums, I'm just going to give them again, I'm just going to dice them. So if you don't like capsicums, you could definitely choose not to use them. But I love my capsicums. There's just something about the colors, and you could definitely eat this raw. They've got a nice sweetness to them. So I really like eating my vegetables, just so I can find out what preferences I like. And it's a good way to actually get you eating vegetables, because if you don't taste them by themselves, you really won't know what they taste like. If you're always submerging them like in sauces, in spices. So sometimes it's always good to just taste the vegetable and see if you actually like it before you start to submerge it in everything else. So that is nice and translucent. So it's softened up. You can actually see it's not so firm, the onions. So we're going to add our garlic now. And then just stir this. We're just stirring this until the garlic is fragrant. We don't want it to brown at this stage. So just the nice aromatic smell of the garlic. It doesn't take long. I can already smell it. And we're going to be adding our tomatoes in there as well. And of course our capsicums that I just chopped. So once it's fragrant, go ahead, add your tomatoes. And then stir this. Oh, the garlic. It smells so good. So just keep stirring this. And then we're going to be adding a bit of tomato paste, not too much though. So all we want this to do is actually just steam itself in its juices. And then I'm going to season this with a bit of salt, because what the salt does, it helps release the juices from the tomatoes. So just a bit of salt to help the process. It will basically kind of like fasten the process, but not too much. just because if I'm planning to use my stock here, the chicken stock, it's going to have already some salt in it, so you want to be very careful with the amount of salt you add in here. And also because I've seasoned my fish, so always remember everything you've seasoned makes a difference in whatever it is you're cooking. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to increase my heat just a little bit as that cooks gently. Then we're going to add our capsicums. Oh, and the color, you can already see it. It's looking good. It's looking lovely. So we're going to go ahead and now grab our fresh herbs. Now for this, I want this to go right at the last minute because I mentioned it's going to have some herb and butter sauce to it. And I'm using some zest. I'm using some zest as well as the juice of the lemon. The herbs I'm planning to use here are some parsley. So I'm going to go ahead and start chopping this. And some basil leaves as well. Again, this sauce is meant to be nice and herby. So if you don't like your food having a very strong herby taste or herbaceous taste, as people like to say, yes, you don't have to use the herbs like I'm doing. Make sure your herbs are washed though. And then reduce the heat now that it's actually bubbling. Always remember to check on everything you're cooking. So then go ahead and chop your herbs. I'm just going to add a bit more basil, just because I like basil and I have plenty of it here. So why not make use of what you have? And like I've mentioned, the reason I'm not adding my zest here, this is just the zest of lemon, is because I want to taste the fresh flavors way later. I don't want them to be cooked down. So just go ahead and make sure you give this a bit of a fine chop because I want to taste everything. So I want to make sure all the herbs are very finely chopped. So a good chop. Have a look at your food. So I'm going to add a bit of liquid into my mixture. So at this stage now I'm going to add a bit of my tomato paste and then stir that in, as well as my stock. So I'm just going to pour this in and then I'm going to get my other stock. Now I mentioned I'm using chicken stock here. You could use beef stock if you wanted to. If you have the time, you could make some fish stock. Now that will give your sauce a nice fishy taste. And what you'll use for that is just the fish bones. That's what you'd use. If you have got some prawns, you'll use like the head, the tail, basically the shells. That's what you'd use. But I didn't have that time, so I'm just using, like I mentioned, the store-bought stuff. And just ignore my tomato that's trying to get away from me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and add a bit more stock because I need my fish to have some moisture in it. Not too much moisture, just a little moisture. And then set that aside. And then we're going to stir this. This is a lot easier, the wooden ladle. And then at this stage, I want to make sure that I'm tasting the seasoning. So I want to give this a taste and see what I need to add, because remember I haven't seasoned it with anything else other than the salt and the stock. Oh yum, the peppers. And like I mentioned, see, I haven't added much salt in here, but I can already taste it because that has salt. So for me, I'm going to add a bit more black pepper because I like my black pepper. And what happens when you don't over season at this stage, the freshness from the lemon juice and as well as the zest is going to be really, really strong in your mouth, and that's exactly what you're looking for. So I've mentioned I'm going to add a bit of some black pepper, just because I like my pepper. So add that. And then I want to have a look at my rice as I stir this in. So there's not much else going in this at this stage because my tomatoes, I don't want my tomatoes to be completely dead. I want to still see the tomatoes in my dish. And I want you to know that I actually made a tomato-based dish. I don't want you searching for them. So I'm going to now add all my other ingredients that I've not added at this stage, which are my fresh herbs. Though I will be chopping some more herbs at the end just to finish it off. So add all your fresh herbs. And then we're going to put back now our fish into the sauce. Oh, yes. And like I mentioned, you can use whatever herbs you want. A really nice herb that will go very well with fish actually is a herb called dill. Now if you're not familiar with dill, you should definitely go to the market and find out more about it. It's very nice. It has its own strong taste, but it goes very well with fish. If nothing else, fish, especially in fish with a creamy sauce. Oh, it's just perfect. It's perfect. Okay, so give this again a bit of a taste because I've added the herbs as well as my black pepper. Woo. The black pepper, I can actually now taste it because I mentioned I do like my stuff a bit on the extravagant side. So I'm going to go ahead now and add my fish because the only thing left here is my lemon juice and the zest and the butter, which I'm going to finish off. Now the sugar here was just, by the way, if you find your tomatoes to be too acidic, then you want to add a bit of your sugar to balance it out and to make sure that it's not too tangy or too acidic. But right now as it is, to me, it tastes absolutely fine. So I'm not going to go ahead with that step. So I'm going to add a bit of butter. And what the butter here will do is just make your sauce nice and creamy and rich. So add a bit of butter. So it gives it a very nice creamy taste, a creamy finish. Okay, the rice, I can actually smell it, which to me tells me that it should be about done. Most times you can tell rice is done because of the smell. It starts to fill the house, the aromas, you can actually smell it. So we're going to add a bit of our lemon juice, not too much because I might want to add a little bit later at the complete end. And of course, our zest. Now this is just the zest of a lemon, and I'm looking for the freshness. And then I'm just going to add my fish in here because, like I mentioned, I do not want the food to be completely cooked. The fish was not completely cooked, so it's just going to cook gently for about 5 minutes or so. Oh, doesn't it look pretty? Yes, it does. Okay, so that is good. Then we're going to run our teaspoon here, the teaspoon that I just used now to add the herbs and the zest, and then give this another taste to see whether everything has combined really well because I've just added it together. It's always important to taste your food as you go. Oh my god, the lemon that I was talking about, you guys, oh my god, I wish you could taste it. The lemon I was talking about, it's just right in your mouth, the freshness, and that's exactly what you're looking for. So I'm just going to give this a stir and let my fish cook gently. I'm going to cover it a bit with some of the capsicums just so that it has some heat from the top as well. So we'll be going on a short break just so we can serve our food when you come back. We're going to have a paper to our rice. I can smell that. Let's just get our fork here. So get your fork. Yes, so that is actually done. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch it off and have a taste because I am your tester. Like I said, the coconut and the cardamom in this is such a beautiful combination, and I shouldn't talk with food in my mouth. When something is that good, you can't help yourself. Oh, yum. Oh, it tastes so good. And so the other thing you want to make sure you do when you're making your rice is the steam that's in there. I just switched off my heat, but you want to make sure you do not serve your rice at this stage immediately. Give it some time to rest for about 5 minutes to 10 minutes because what that does is all the moisture that's in there is going to keep cooking your rice a little bit further. So it's going to be nice and moist and fluffy, and it's not going to dry out by you opening the lid too fast. So just ensure you keep that as a tip at home. So we're going to go on a short break, guys. As you can see, our food is almost done. Our coconut cardamom rice is almost done, and our tilapia in tomato and herb sauce is almost done. So I'll be seeing you guys right after the break. Hi guys, welcome back to Dinner Guide. I'm your host and chef, Sheena Amario. And if you just tuned in, we're about to wrap up, but not quite yet. We're actually making some coconut cardamom rice, which is there. I'll show you in just a minute. And then for the fish, we actually had some tilapia fish, which is in a nice tomato, herb and butter sauce. So it's very nice and herby and zesty and fresh. Those are all the flavors we're looking for our tomato dish, for tilapia in a tomato dish. So to go ahead, we're going to start plating our food. And for this, we just joined it. I just let this finish off in the last minute. The fish, I had pre-cooked it, just browned it on both sides, and it was like 3/4 way done. So once my sauce was ready, I just put it back in to heat through and to make sure it's cooked all the way through. And then for my rice, the aromas, I can already smell them. I have this thing with rice. I could actually eat rice throughout the whole week, even for a year if I had to. So what you want to do is to make sure that you fluff up your rice. And what this does is makes sure that the rice is nice and individual, like you can see. And that's how you know you've made yourself some nice perfect rice, because it's nice and fluffy. So that's what you want to do there. So we're going to go ahead and serve our fish. Now our fish is nice and zesty. Like I mentioned, I added the zest right at the last minute because I wanted to make sure that the sauce we're making is very nice and fresh, because I am making a very fresh dish here. So just going to add our fish. Then I'm going to add some of the sauces all around my fish. Remember, I mentioned I'm making tilapia in a tomato, herb and butter sauce. So we're just going to make sure that there's enough moisture around your plate, enough to go around at least. So just going to spread some love. We're spreading some love on our plate. And we're going to drizzle a bit of the juices on top. Now for this, if you don't like your lemon, you could definitely use less lemon, but it is meant to be a little bit, just a little bit acidic, not too much, because fish and lemon go very well. They're like a match made in heaven. So that's good enough. So we're kind of just filling this to the brim. And then we're going to go ahead and sprinkle a bit of the zest. Remember, I had some zest here because I want it to be nice and fresh. The key word here was fresh and zesty. So I'm just going to add a bit of my zest, and of course a bit of my herbs, because I did mention I was making my fish in a nice herb and tomato sauce. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a bit of my parsley as well as my basil leaves. Just give this a fine chop. Now you could definitely use whatever herbs you wanted. I mentioned earlier you could use dill. If you haven't heard of dill, go out to your market and then just ask them for dill. It goes very, very well with fish. It's also another match made in heaven. It's one of those things. They complement each other very well. So just drizzle a bit of your herbs on top of your fish, not too much. And then we're going to go ahead and plate our rice now. Now our rice is nice and nutty. I did a taste test for you guys before we went on the break. And like I've mentioned right now, I could eat rice all through because I'm just that kind of person. I really love my rice. There's just something about it. So just scoop some of your rice. And you'll notice that actually the seeds from the cardamom, like I mentioned, the bashing it helps release them. And here you can actually see this very easily. It helps release them. So you're going to get the nice flavors from also the rice that's toasted earlier. Remember, at the beginning we had some of the rice that toasted a little bit brown. So that's what you're going to get when you're serving it. It's going to have a bit of the mixture of that rice. And of course the nutty flavors you're looking for, and all the seeds that have been released that you can actually see the nice little black spots. Those are actually all from your cardamom. So our rice is looking nice and vibrant. Yum. So I'm going to go ahead and plate that there. We could actually give our rice also a little bit of color. I mean, why not? I'm just going to garnish it a little bit. Remember, it's meant to have a nice nutty flavor to it because we did use coconut oil as well as coconut milk. But the coconut oil is the one that releases the nutty flavors and gives it this beautiful, nice, nutty flavor. So that's it, guys. That's it for today. So I just want to wipe that. So that's it for today. We made some nice coconut cardamom rice with some tilapia in a tomato, herb and butter sauce. I hope you enjoyed it. It was not too difficult to make. I had a good time making the dish and I hope you guys feel inspired to make it. Remember, I mentioned if you don't like tilapia, you could definitely use red snapper or kingfish, whatever fish you like, so that you can feel inspired to try the dish at home. I am your host and chef, Sheena Amario. Be sure to follow us on Brand Plus TV, on Facebook, social media, so we can interact some more. This is Dinner Guide. See you next time. Bye!